welcome to Go Vote Omaha, a presentation of the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm MaryLee Moulton, your host and a member of the League. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that does not support or oppose candidates or parties. Each program, we discuss important public policy issues, and we hope you'll discuss these issues, and at election time, you'll be ready and willing to go vote. Our guest today is Linda Duckworth, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Nebraska. Thanks for being with us, Linda.
Thank you for having me, MaryLee.
Yes. On our show today, we're going to talk about League priority bills for the short session of the Nebraska Legislature. Before we get started, we just want to review for our viewers that the Nebraska Legislature is a nonpartisan unicameral made up of 49 senators. Every bill receives a committee hearing. And this session, there are 482 bills, a lot for the short session. It is still the 106th legislature of Nebraska. A bill has to be voted out of committee to be heard on the floor of the legislature, and every bill does get heard in committee. The senators can then choose a priority bill, which is placed ahead of others in floor debate. And the way it works is that in order for a bill to move forward, they have to be debated twice, first in general file, then in select file, and they can amend bills as they go through those debates. And then they have a final reading, and if everyone approves, it goes to the governor to be vetoed or for his signature.
Or at least if enough approves.
Yes, if enough approves.
That's right,
so it's a kind of unique system.
It is, and I just happen to think it's terrific. I didn't grow up here, and so this is not what I grew up with, but I think it's absolutely astounding that anybody can come and testify, and they do. I was watching the unicameral today of the Natural Resources Committee. I wanted to see one of our board members, one of our state league board members testify. That's Megan York Lyons, and she testified on LR. Oh, great! I've forgotten the name of it. It's the one that it's a legislative resolution. It's the one that the students came up with, and so I got to see her, and I even made a little video. Right? It's about climate change. That's right. So it's very cool that these middle school children could be there testifying, and they did a wonderful job. And so anyway, it's just very inspiring to me that they can do that. And also the fact that every bill gets a hearing. There are no caucuses to say, oh no, we don't like that one.
Right, that's important. There are no caucuses by party in the Nebraska Legislature. And there's secret ballot for who heads the committee. So it's a really unique situation.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good one.
So tell us, how does the League develop the bills that are their priorities?
We have, we've got our values. We know what our values are, but every year or two, we think about things like what's important right now. So we've obviously studied many issues in our 100 years. We just turned 100 last Friday, so yay us. Yes. Happy birthday, League of Women Voters. And that includes our state league, is that old too. And so we've been studying issues on the national, local and state levels, and so we could choose a lot of these, and we're going to talk about quite a few. But what we did this year, and what we try to do every year, is what's important to us that also fits with our positions. What has a chance of actually succeeding, so it just needs to kind of reflect our values. And so then the actual mechanism is that our board of directors, and anybody, it can be any member, any of the 500 or so members in the state can chime in and say, I think this is an important bill, so please look at this one. Then we have a meeting, and it's usually right around the 1st of February, somewhere in the first week of February on a Saturday in Lincoln. And anybody's invited to that one. Any member is invited to that one too. Right,
and we have Sherry St. Clair, who's the government person who sorts through all of these.
Sherry Miller is mainly the one who does that.
Right.
Sherry St. Clair
and Sherry Miller work together.
Did they work together on that?
I think so.
Yeah. And so yeah, sorted through first, but then we also did talk about an awful lot of them. We didn't get to all 482, but we did talk about a lot of them. Anyway, so yeah, we came up with 4 that we thought were important, and for those reasons I stated.
Okay, now we had a legislative day down in Lincoln where our members attended on February 12th, and there were 4 specific bills that were our priority for that day. Can you tell us a little bit about the 4 bills that the League really emphasized on our legislative day down there?
And I do want to talk up legislative day. Here's my bright yellow folder from that. I think that was chosen because of the yellow rose of suffrage, is what I suspect. But anyway, so yeah, we had every member who was there got to see what the talking points were, and I got feedback from people. I've been getting feedback that said they really liked having the committee or the actual board members to do the talking instead of senators. So I thought that was interesting, because sometimes we'll have senators come and talk about their bills. So the first one, are we going to start with this now? We'll go ahead and talk about the broadband?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk about the first bill.
Right. So LB 996 is the broadband bill, and there was another broadband bill too, but we kind of focused on this one. And that is because it's a good, clean bill. Obviously, the general talking points for having broadband or for expanding broadband in Nebraska is because it's only fair, and that is how when I gave testimony the day that it was that they had the hearing on that, my statement, our position was, I forget how I said it exactly, but basically it was about, oh, here it is right here. Why don't I read that? The League of Women Voters supports equal opportunities for all, and therefore we support LB 996. And we're especially thinking in equality of education opportunities, because they talk about students having to go to McDonald's to access the internet to do their homework, and maybe the library, if there's a library, and so on and so forth. And so it's really important that it be expanded.
And the interesting thing is that this is really to access federal funds that are already out there,
Right.
that because we really don't have a good mapping of where we're having problems with broadband in rural Nebraska, we're not able to access that money. So
That's right. And so what this was a fairly narrow bill, which made it so good in a way, because it was simply about mapping, making sure that the mapping is correct, because the FCC requires that to be in there. And I think one of our members who is from not outstate Nebraska, what is it? Greater Nebraska. That's the word. Sorry. She lives in Greater Nebraska, and she and her husband have a home where there's a mapping district, I think they call it, and they're in this little corner, and they do have internet. Hooray! But everybody else that they know does not, and yet because somebody in that square, in that enormous square, has internet, the FCC thinks everybody does. So this is what this actually corrects. That's part of what this corrects.
Right, and this
so
is Senator Brandt's bill, and it's already on select file, which is
done
good.
very well.
And
yes.
it's his priority bill, so we are really, hoping that this is going to make it through the legislature.
And it should. Yeah, it should, because it really. It's not. It doesn't even have a fiscal note, because it's just accessing federal dollars.
Right.
So I think it should do just fine.
And then next is the redistricting bill by Senator McCollister, which we've worked long and hard with Senator McCollister on redistricting. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So we have worked with Senator McCollister and other senators over the years to try to, every year for the last, I don't know how many years, maybe more than 5, tried to get a really comprehensive redistricting bills through. So
and redistricting occurs every 10 years after the census.
After the census,
so
meaning 2020, or well, the census is 2020, and then 2021 is when the redistricting happens. And so it's the way we do it now. It's through the legislature. That's okay, but there is some, kind of maybe not entirely fairness about that, the way it's been done. And so this bill still keeps it in the hands of the legislature, so we think that the legislature should be okay with that. In other words, we're not saying just come up with a whole new commission like Iowa has, which honestly is a very good system, but we realize that we're going to try to take what we can. So this just puts parameters on there that makes it more fair.
So we have guardrails to keep, you know, political favoritism out, things like that.
And then you were going to talk about fairmaps.ne.org,
Yes,
right?
and the reason we're supporting the redistricting bill is very closely tied to a national campaign the League of Women Voters have called People Powered Fair Maps. And what we're really trying to do is put the focus on redistricting, so people are thinking when they're filling out their census, which we hope everyone will do. You'll see the census beginning of March. That information will determine how all sorts of dollars get spent in Nebraska, but for us it will also determine how the districts are redrawn. So we really want to make sure this is a fair process, and we have a site, fairmapsnebraska.org, and that particular site gives a lot of really good information, and we will be having a whole show to talk about the Fair Maps campaign.
Yes, and census, by the way. If any members or anybody in the community wants to help get the word out, there's going to be some training, not to be an enumerator,
Right.
a census taker, but to actually be a spokesperson, or to be a person who has enough information that they can share with people.
Right, and I think that training is going to happen on our with Dine and Discuss,
which
you can
is the
find out information about
24th.
that
Yeah.
on lwvgo.org. So.
Yeah, good.
So what happens if this redistricting bill isn't passed in this session?
Well, first of all, what's probably going to happen is that there will be citizens who say, well, we have got to do something about the way we redistrict. So then we're looking at a ballot initiative. And so there will be people out there, and I'm guessing that depending on what it looks like, we, the League of Women Voters, will join in with whatever coalition is put together to get that through. And so honestly, it behooves the senators to go ahead and get this thing out of committee, get it onto the floor, get it debated, send it through. But, you know, if that doesn't happen, then yes. And then depending on what happens there, they could still try again next year to put together a better redistricting.
They would technically kick the can to next year, but it looks like people will probably not be satisfied with that, and will probably do some sort of a ballot initiative.
Yeah,
so
should be interesting.
It should be.
Yeah.
So then our next priority is LB 932,
Yes.
which is about the Medicaid expansion, which I think a lot of our viewers think was done last year.
Well, and it was, except that it wasn't done. And that, you know, that is kind of I think that's a new phenomenon. It's not only in Nebraska. Maybe we learned it from South Dakota, for instance, where they passed an initiative, and then sometimes the legislatures will be so bold as to just say, no, the people didn't mean that, and so at least that didn't happen here. Oh yeah, and so basically they're kind of saying, yeah, we'll get this done. And then of course there's this waiver 1115 to create a Heritage Health Adult Expansion Program for certain able-bodied adults. They love to say, if you're able-bodied, you're right. And you know, the definition of able-bodied, you have to be careful about that. And
this is a Trump administration. They're going to try to get this
the waiver. Yeah,
correct?
It was.
Okay.
I don't know if it probably is the administration. Yeah, I'm guessing. Okay. But anyway, it talks about the reasons those can be problematic. All the various reasons it may not. That it's very difficult sometimes for people to be in the tier 1, isn't it tier 1? The tier 1 is the good one, is the one you want to be in, right?
Yes, but basically what happens here is that this bill gives them a date that says on October 1st you've got to implement Medicaid for these people. So.
And I think without that, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I think that, sorry, I don't seem to be very...
You're doing fine. Okay. So finally, the fourth priority was LB 283 from Senator Pansing Brooks. And this is actually a carryover bill from last session, but with some changes that make it much more Nebraska specific, do some things to make the funding a little more accessible. So give us an idea.
Of course, it's green.
Yes.
On that one, yeah. So added a couple of things, including terrible weather or catastrophic weather or extreme weather events. And I don't know if that was, probably it had something to do with last year's floods. And then also it talks about, it's adding also economic opportunities. So it talks about renewable energy because, you know, I think I heard the quote today as I was listening to that testimony, $5 million have gone to farmers in Nebraska because they have either turbines on their property or solar panels or whatever. So, and then if they're making money, then this is going, tax dollars are going into these small communities. So it definitely is a boon for smaller communities in greater Nebraska.
And it really does emphasize this weather, this crazy weather that Nebraska farmers have been dealing with to try to get them, you know, some idea. We're talking about hiring 2 people at the University of Nebraska to study this.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they're creating a whole bureaucracy. They just really want to have some people look into what's happening to the climate that's really affecting our farmers adversely.
Yes, right. I know that many farmers are waiting for this or looking for this, and and I think the fiscal note it's less than $500,000.
Right, and I think it's coming out of a specific fund,
That's
tax
right.
fund
Yes,
that's already
that's right. It is
there.
called the Petroleum Release Remedial Action Collection.
So
That's
this is
right.
not a tax increase, it's just a kind of a rejiggering of where some money is going. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, even though we had these 4 priority bills for Legislative Day, we have quite a number of other bills that we've looked at, and I'm going to try to just go through briefly some of these with you, and you can maybe highlight some of the ones that are really important.
Can I say, so we had that day where we were talking about bills, and and so we you know, the way I was doing, I was putting a star by the 4 that we came up with, but then made another notation for the ones that we want to, that we're highlighting in some way. So it could mean that we are opposing, all of those 4 we are supporting.
Right.
There are other bills that we are opposing, and there are bills that we are monitoring, and we may go toward support, we may go toward oppose, we may just leave it at, you know, neutral or monitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, among the education bills, there's one that really kind of stands out, which is LB 1202, which is the Opportunity Scholarship Bill from Senator Linehan. And this is actually a bill that the League opposes, and it is her priority bill if it comes out of committee. So tell us a little about that particular bill.
Well,
and why
I
we
mean,
oppose it.
just the bottom line is it takes our hard-earned taxpayer dollars and uses that money to give tax breaks or refunds or whatever to people whose kids go to private schools. And there has been discussion about that, about why it, even though proponents might like to say that it benefits children who can't afford, who want to go to a private school, but it's not going to be enough for them. So it really is just going to benefit people who already have enough money to send their children to private schools.
And then there's the issue, you know, at the same time, they've got this new tax measure that's working its way through trying to reduce income taxes, or excuse me, property taxes for Nebraskans and changing the whole school formula. So it's kind of hard to do that on one hand and then, you know, be cutting, you know, giving tax credits, taking money out of the system. So I think that's,
this is an
also
expensive bill,
problematic.
so I'm surprised that, I will be surprised if it does well. I will be surprised and disappointed, honestly.
So are there any other particular education bills?
Let's see. There were just some of them that I think would be just pretty self-explanatory and easy to support. For instance, recognizing American Sign Language and providing for the teaching of it in schools. That was one by Senator Wishart. It's 839. Another one is legal education. It's appropriate funds to the Commission on Public Advocacy for Legal Education. That's another one by Senator Greigert. And there are just a few others here that just make sense, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to government bills, there's a really interesting one that that Senator Scheer, who's the Speaker, has made his priority, and it's on general file already. And it's LR 279CA, which is a constitutional amendment to authorize the increase in numbers of the legislature. So that's kind of an interesting concept, and can you give us an idea of where that whole kind of thought process comes from? Why do they want to increase the size of the legislature?
Right. His idea is that, you know, the state has grown, and and also he points out that we have the smallest number of legislators in the whole United States, at 49, and he means, you know, a one, no matter what house, whether, well, no, I don't mean it that way. I guess if this were a House of Representatives, right? So anyway, that's true. Nevertheless, what he doesn't maybe mention is that as far as how many people, how many citizens, how many people are represented by a particular representative, it's still our numbers are still pretty low compared to other states. But at any rate, so our position is monitor or support. We could, at this point, it's still monitor.
And are they concerned about redistricting and some of the rural representation? Is that
it's
also
going to be,
part
I
of the
mean,
thought process
that being,
too?
I don't even know how, what do you think about the fact that this is this is coming up the same year as we talk about redistricting? I mean, I guess if you're going to do it, that's when you would do it.
Sure, I think that that the rural senators and rural Nebraskans are concerned that when redistricting happens, most of the growth in Nebraska has happened in Omaha and Lincoln in the metro areas. And,
so you're saying
you know,
their districts are just going to be really big.
They're going to get bigger and bigger. So I think that may be where that's
They are losing
from.
population, that's true.
So there's another bill that we're opposing, which is LB 292CA, and this is a bill that Senator LaGrone has put up, which is a voter ID bill. And the League has been firmly against voter ID for a long time. And can you talk a little bit about?
Yeah, we're talking voter ID, and we have managed to, I like to say, beat it back for, I don't know if this is 8 years now. It's been a number of years that we've been able to, we and other organizations and other citizens and lots of thoughtful people have been able to oppose it and keep it at bay. Now, this, instead of being a regular bill, it's a constitutional amendment that they want to get through. And that is going to be really hard to convince folks that it's not a good thing. Because honestly, when I first heard about voter ID, I just thought, well, that makes sense. You know, I have my ID. I show it for this, that, and the other thing. But but the thing is, yes, you have to show your ID if you're going to fly in a plane. But the point is, an airplane ride that you might take is not a constitutional right, but a vote. And not only that, it is our constitutional right to vote. And in Nebraska, in particular, the wording is even more. It's even stronger than in other states. It's there shall not be impediments to voting, and so on and so forth. So, so that is kind of our point. But also, there is. You know, I like bills such as Senator Brandt's bill, where people come to him and they say, we don't have broadband, can you help us fix this? And they write this bill and they figure out how to do that. This is like the opposite. There is nobody coming and saying, oh my gosh, there is voter fraud everywhere, because there isn't voter fraud. It's absolutely not happening.
And this is not something that's kind of esoteric. This is information that you've gotten from the former Secretary of State, John Gale, from the people here at the Douglas County Election Commission. I mean, explain what they've said to you.
Well, and they've said, I just was certified the other day. I had my training again to be a voter registrar, and our instructor was talking about how there had been 3 possible cases of voter fraud in the last, I think, 100 years. I think I have that right. I think I understood him correctly. And then there was absolutely nothing was prosecuted because it didn't really kind of, you know, it was a pretty weak kind of thing. So, yeah, so this is not a huge problem. This is not a problem at all, and then there's cost, and it may not cost, they might put it in here so that it is not a cost to state taxpayers. Instead, the cost is going to fall to the counties because it's going to require more personnel, more training, more time, all that. So no, it's a bad idea.
So unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I'm skipping around a little bit. Let's see. So why don't we talk about Senator Hunt's bill, which is to expand to allow counties to conduct elections by mail. So this is something that the League has been in favor of. Can you talk about why we favor vote by mail?
Well, first of all, there will be greater participation whenever there's vote by mail. Sometimes it goes way up, but it always goes up. And it's obviously more inclusive. There are so many people that have a hard time getting to the polls. And so it's
And what
very
about
automatic.
cost?
Oh my gosh, you're right. Thank you for
Yes.
reminding me of that. Yeah. What did he say the other day about how they ordinarily have, I don't know, 100 or so, maybe a couple hundred, doesn't seem like it's that many, however many employees they have. All of a sudden, on election day, they have 2,800 employees, and all those employees have to be trained and hopefully trained, and paid and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's much more. And and also, the commissioners will all tell you you get a more accurate, you do a better job, get more accurate results if you vote by mail.
And we don't have to pay for updated voting machines then either.
That's right.
Which has also been an issue in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So how can viewers keep up with these bills, Linda? How do they make sure that they're able to see what's going on?
Well, the legislature's pretty good about that. They are, they help us out. They've got, there's a place where you can just look up a specific bill, and you can go to this nebraskalegislature.gov/bills. What I do usually is just Google, look up bill, Nebraska Legislature, but anyway. And then there's also, you can subscribe to an update, so that's pretty great. And then you get regular updates, and that is update.legislature.ne.gov. And then, of course, there's the League of Women Voters of Nebraska, and probably the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, if you're a member, or even whatever. Yeah, so, and I think we put it out on social media. There are ways to know what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we may have maybe one or two other bills we have a chance to talk about real quickly.
Okay,
yes, LB 101, which is Senator Crawford's bill requiring suicide prevention phone numbers on student identification cards. This is something that we're hoping that will make it back through the legislature.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I was trying to see if, do we know if that's a priority bill of anybody?
I don't believe that's a priority.
Okay, but the chances are hopefully pretty good. Even the ones that aren't necessarily priority bills, they still, if it's pretty self-explanatory, simple, common sense, sometimes it makes it through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have Senator Wayne's bill, which is LB 970, limiting the amount the individual pays for insulin drugs. And that's something else we're reporting, because that's really become a huge problem. Well, Linda, thank you so much. We could spend another half hour talking about all of these things. We've got so many bills out there, and so many working their way through the chambers. And we encourage our viewers to be involved, to go to these websites that we put up, to keep an eye on what's going on with the different bills. So for the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I am MaryLee Moulton, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues, and at election time, go vote Omaha. Thanks very much, Linda.
You're welcome. Thank you.